Welcome to another episode of the Thunderstock Show, collection of valuable brainstorms to enhance your life, liberty, and pursuit of property. Today's special guest is Kent Sariano. Kent is a direct response copywriter turned marketer for real estate investors. Can't wait to hear this story. Two topics that are near and dear to the heart. Kent, how you doing? What's going on?
I'm good, man. Not much, not much. Staying busy. How are you doing?
We're both in central Pennsylvania. I would be happier if it was either winter or spring, not this like bullshit mix of in between.
Yeah, man, it's rough. I'm looking out my window right now and it's raining. So, uh,
It, it's not like Los Angeles, which I understand that you have some experience in SoCal.
I do, yeah. I was living out there. I lived out there for about 6 years, and I was chasing the dream of screenwriting for Hollywood. So, kind of a creative background for me.
What types of screenwriting, like what are some of the brainchild things that you try to write and pitch to Hollywood?
Yeah, man. I wrote a lot of dark comedies. So stuff like I really like stuff like Being John Malkovich or Death at a Funeral, like those kind of like quirky comedy that were kind of dark. And so I would write stuff like that. Like I wrote one about a therapist who wrote a play about a couple that he was treating. And so that was one kind of thing I wrote about. And then I wrote about like a history teacher who was trying to save the town square, but he got into this like fight with the mayor who wanted to kind of like expand things. So looking back, like they're not really like Hollywood movies. So I think that's kind of one thing I learned. I wasn't like really like writing for those big broad audiences. I was
They're
kind
more
of writing
indie.
for more indie, kind of quirky comedies, like endearing, like heartwarming stuff. So I had fun. I worked on them a lot. It's a ton of work to write a screenplay. They're like 90 pages, 120 pages.
Yeah, I took plenty of literature and philosophy courses in school. One of my favorite was philosophy of film, and I could be wrong. I think I took that for two semesters. There's like two versions of it. One was foreign, which was interesting as everything was like subtitled, but the artistic value is super high. And one was, I want to say, like um not historical, but you get like the original Nosferatu and like black
Hmm.
and white all the way up until like the 90s. And I think some of my favorite films growing up were maybe they had some Hollywood success, but probably not in the box office. So when I think of dark comedy, two films from the early 2000s, late 90s, it's like Fight Club, which became incredibly
Hmm.
cult popular. I think it was maybe people didn't think it was supposed to be funny, but like I think it was dark comedy. And then
Yeah.
Donnie Darko,
Hmm.
Jim Kelly, worst timing of all time to go into theaters. When it's about a plane crash on September 9th of 2001. They yanked it from theaters in a week.
I never realized that that was the timeline on that. That's
Yeah.
wild. Yeah.
Yeah, there's an entire like hour of your life you would never get back if you want to talk with me about just the philosophy of Donnie Darko, which I'm not going
Really.
to make you suffer through, or the listeners specifically. So you were chasing the dream of screenwriting, which is cool because I feel like so many people, unfortunately for me, I'm glad that a lot of people I talk to do chase the dream, but people
Yeah.
that I don't talk to, like, I've just heard so many times where they like regret not doing it. So what are some of the takeaways from like chasing the dream?
I think my biggest takeaway is like that you can chase the dream, but you could probably also like set up like a career path at the same time. Like I don't think they have to be mutually exclusive. And that's like one thing looking back where, I wish I would have just had like I would have put some time aside to like maybe just like build some other options on the side. At the same time, like if you're gonna do something, you gotta be all in, right? So maybe that's just me kind of like looking back and idealizing it.
Yeah, it's hard to have. I don't know if there's ever like a right answer, right? It's just like
Yeah,
experience changes how you perceive it. Um, I know I spent time trying to pursue being a mixed martial artist.
yeah,
And when I had the most success, I was working a corporate startup like 50 hours, 60 hours a week, and then just training on the side. So I was essentially working 80 hours a week trying to be a pro athlete. And I was like, oh, if I want to take it to the next level, I just can't be working. And then I exited that company and I did MMA full time. I was like, I fucking hate this. That's the only thing I do. And I'm making no money and I'm like in a worse place. So, you know, uh,
yeah,
that was one way for me to get to the end result of the dream chase just faster. I was like, this dream's turning into a nightmare. That's my story, but it's interesting to hear like um your take was kind of similar to where you're like, oh well, um the reality is if it works out, that's awesome, but then if it doesn't, like everyone eventually has to, when I say everyone, I mean like 99% of the population has to have like a different pivot or course correction. And what was that
yeah.
pivot for you?
Well, it was basically it was like 2020, and I decided to move in with my girlfriend, right? And then we found out that she was pregnant like a week later, and then COVID hit. So it was basically like those three things going off at once where I was like, okay, maybe I should use this downtime to like start finding a way to make money. Because like you're writing screenplays, it's like it's all spec. It's like you're not getting paid to do it. Like you're
Mm-hmm.
basically taking a gamble on yourself. So I was like, oh, like copywriting is kind of like a lateral move because it's still creative, but still writing. But it seems like there's a lot of demand for it. So kind of jumped in there, and yeah, you know, that was the move, getting into copywriting.
And who did you do copywriting for?
Yeah, I did copywriting for so many people. The first one I did was like for this medical marijuana site, and it was like they paid me like $50 to rewrite their homepage, right? And I just like went all in on it, because when you're starting out, you don't have like a track record,
You
like
need
in
a
real
track
estate.
record.
Yeah, you don't have a track record, so you got to take these like lowball jobs. And I just did a bunch of those jobs, and yeah, I mean, I can't even remember all of them. It's like Facebook ads, like little blog articles, basically anything you can to kind of get some traction. I remember one job I had was like taking these articles about like dog collars and rewriting the intro so they could turn it into a YouTube script. So basically something you could just do with Chat GPT now. Like that job's not even there anymore, you know. But back then they would like hire a copywriter to rewrite the intro of the blog article to be a catchy script for YouTube.
Yeah, that's interesting. You mentioned ChatGPT. I talked to somebody the other day, and their philosophy on deliverables as in terms of like marketing is that, oh, it's all going to go with AI. And I'm thinking
Yeah,
in my mind, like, on one hand, yeah, it's a lot easier to create, image assets and to edit videos, and yeah, you can ask generative AI to do the writing for you and stuff. But like, number one, you have to prompt engineer. Like, you can't just say write a blog post about medical marijuana, boom, hit enter, and it'll come up with the right thing for that first example you said at the $50. Like,
yeah,
it could still be junk out, and then there's that
mhm,
process of dealing with it. And then the other end, it's like I look at generative AI at least in today, where it's like 80% as effective, like the end result's like maybe 80% as good as a good person. But then you still need a good person to review and edit and like make it real, whether you're writing to an AI or whether you're just like going into the document and like doing it yourself. Um, it just, I think it enhances the job as opposed to it's a tool, but it's not like a person. Like you can't just get like a forklift and be like, all right, warehouse workers are done. You're not using
mm,
dolly carts anymore. Now there's some
yeah,
Amazon things with like robots and shit, but one, 90% of the warehouses in the country, in my assumption, are not using that. And two, there's probably still a
Mhm.
bunch of issues with them. What are your thoughts on like AI and how it's affecting your industry?
I mean, you're definitely right. Like, well, it's wiped out a lot of low paying jobs, but that's okay because they weren't really like high value jobs anyway. But yeah, you're kind of right. You still need that like that person to kind of like spearhead your marketing campaigns, right? And uh I'm surprised by like the way that ChatGPT can spit out content without much prompting, but if you really want to get like good stuff out of it, you really have to kind of like train it, on your brand voice, on your ideas, and like what you want it to ultimately put out. Um, and yeah, I think it's just like a tool. Like you're always going to need someone to kind of be there, like putting the fine touch on things because even though ChatGPT is getting better and better, and all AI models are getting better and better, you still see the same patterns showing up in like the language and the writing across like different people's content. Like I noticed this, I'll see the same phrases showing up in one guy's LinkedIn post, and I'll see it in another guy's LinkedIn post, right? And so it might be getting better, but it's still kind of like mimicking itself across the board, which ultimately, if you're creating a brand or something, like you can't look like that, you can't sound like that, and
Right.
no one can replace your original voice. Like your original voice is the most powerful thing you have. Like your experiences and your storytelling, and the things you've done. Like that's really what's going to connect with people through content writing and through your marketing, I believe. So those things, they can't be replaced by AI. And honestly, in some ways, you're sacrificing them if you're just outsourcing them to AI.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that some of the low paying like roles, like there was a stint I did in 2015 where I was basically doing cold outreach for user generated content to try and get backlinks. That was
Mhm.
like 40 hour a week of my role. And now I can use AI and other softwares to do like mm, 200 times the output for like way less cost. And that
Mhm.
job I did before shouldn't exist if that's the case, right?
Yep.
But sure, it can book meetings, but you still need a person to have the meeting. Um,
Yeah.
and I think for people that are just bad at writing, like maybe you just won't be paid to be bad at writing anymore. Like you can be good at something else.
That's
But if you're
true.
good at writing, I think the value continues to go up because then you just separate yourself from the pack.
Yeah, I agree. And I think like one thing I hear people say this a lot. I'm not sure if it's true. I don't think it's 100% true, but they say like the value's not in execution anymore. Which I don't 100% agree with because I have people hitting me up for like copywriting jobs, like they need someone. But I think having the ideas and being able to create the fresh ideas behind the content is what's going to really separate the people who are winners from people who aren't like, you know, getting results from their content. Um, yeah, because at the end of the day, I think it's your ideas that separate you. And if everyone's kind of drinking from the same well, so to speak, with like AI, then the people who are going to go above and beyond are going to be the ones who are standing out.
You know what AI can't do? Can't build a house,
Yeah.
can't manage a property. So when it comes to real estate, I understand that's like one of the industries. You're not just doing, helping people on Upwork and today. You're focused
Mhm.
down. Can you tell me a little bit about the niche of like real estate and real estate investment?
Yeah. So basically, now I work with fund managers, syndicators, and just capital raisers in general. So these are people who are usually they're buying apartment buildings or some of them are buying single family houses. Some of them are developing like industrial warehouse space. And so I've kind of niched down to help these people create their marketing assets. And even more specifically, now I'm working with fund managers to raise capital from LinkedIn. And so basically, what I do is, depending on their experience, I will meet with them. I will help them kind of like, understand what's unique about them and then I will optimize their LinkedIn profile by writing all their content for it, figuring out their branding to an extent, and then writing their content and posting their content and helping them grow so they can get basically start conversations with accredited investors who can come in as, you know, LPs in their deals and invest.
So I have a background in what you're talking about, the real estate syndication, the Burr method, all these acronyms.
Yep.
But for anyone that's listening, what Kent's talking about when he says LPs and accredited investors, those terms, accredited investor, I know that the SEC, they kind of changed the term, but the last time I checked, it was like when a couple makes more than like, I think it's 300K a year over the course of
Mm-hmm.
like 3 years, or an individual makes over 200K a year over the course of 3 years, and or they have liquid assets. I think it's a million or more. That would can constitute as an accredited investor, which is different than a sophisticated investor, which is someone that's not that.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that it's important to know these terms when it comes to investing is because the rules and regulations for people that do these investments in real estate change when you have a certain ratio or number of like non-accredited versus accredited. So if you want to get into real estate investing, I would say the easiest way is to become an accredited investor first. Like less risk and less volatility when you're trying to talk with these investors. And then when he's saying LP versus like GP, limited partner is I give you the money and you do the stuff, and then we have a deal where I get paid returns on the investment. Versus general partner is like you give me the money, I manage the money and the investment and do the work, and I'll pay you the returns, but I also get a cut of the returns because I'm doing the work. So I think that part of the tough job for marketing, and maybe you can speak to this too, is there's there's a metaphor that I've started to believe in more. In the beginning, I thought it was
Mm-hmm.
BS. It's like 3% of your target audience is like already willing to buy, and if you build it, they will come and they'll just buy. Like it's like psh, I'm in. But 97% either has some like educational or informational gap, like they just don't know. They might not know either not only your brand exists, but like the problem exists or the solution exists. And they don't even know like the terms in credit and investor, and maybe someone's in a credit investor, they don't even know it. So like how do you do the marketing to try and connect with that 97% potentially of the market that's like, ooh, this could be cool.
Yeah, I actually totally agree with you on that too. I 100% believe that, right? Because most people just aren't ready to buy right when they meet you the first time. So you got to nurture them. So like what I do is I just on LinkedIn, I use a bunch of different posts. Like that's what I consider like the first place where they meet you. So we use a lot of case studies to show proof of past results, right? So like for real estate investors, it's really important to show that you have a track record, right? Um, because you know, if you want someone to invest with you, right, they need to see that you've done the job before, right? It's just like hiring like a marketer. Like you need to see that like they can actually execute and get you results before you want to hire them, right? So I use a lot of case studies to show what my clients have done successfully, and you know, especially like we want to show that they've been through down markets before, right? So like with real estate investing, it's almost like any other business. When times are good, right? Like everybody's good. Everybody's good at selling. Everybody can get, you know, deals. But when times are bad, and a lot of people don't survive, right? So you really want to be working with someone who's been through like a down market and who survived it and who has like been able to give their investors returns. So we try to highlight case studies that show that, right? To convince these people that they're working with the right person. I also do a lot of these problem solution posts, right? So, you know, a lot of the people that we market to are W-2s. So they can be sales executives, they're tech CFOs, they're software developers, right? So, you know, I'm I really spend a lot of time working on speaking to the pains that they have and the desires that they have, right? So like a lot of the problems that a lot of these people have is sometimes they don't want to be tied to like the desk or their computer for 8 hours a day for the rest of their lives, right? Like if they're in their 40s, their mid 40s, like they want some free time to go travel or spend with their kids, right? There are also people who live in high cost of living areas. So even if they're making 200K a year, 250K a year, right? It's not like you're living in Mechanicsburg, PA, where the cost of living is low. If you live in Palo Alto, right,
Mm.
200K doesn't go as far. So I'm
It's almost
always,
entry level there, I'm sure.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So it's like, so we're always marketing to these problems, and we set someone's up. We basically what I do is I set up the problem, and then I show how my client's investment is the solution to that problem, right? So, passive cash flow. If you're a tech guy and you get laid off, you still got passive cash flow coming in to protect you, right? So you don't eat into your retirement savings. Or, you know, if your cost of living is going up and you don't want to leave your neighborhood, you don't want to leave your friends, but property insurance is going up, everything's going up. The passive cash flow helps cushion that. So those are just a few of the things I do to market to people and so get them through, what we call the marketing funnel.
Yeah, the case study thing is so I'm glad you said that first because two reasons. One, I totally agree that the best indicator for future success is evidence of past success. So it's like how do you stack wins
Mm-hmm.
and how do you communicate those wins because it's incredibly important. But then the other part about case studies, which probably ties back into your experience with screenplay and creative writing, is like you need to be able to tell a story that it's great to have stats and figures, like, but if people don't consume the content and they don't read it, they don't. It's like a tree falls in the woods, no one hears it. Like if you have a great case study but no one reads it, no one gives a shit.
Totally.
So, man, that's an interesting way to look at it because like I've talked to people, Ken, you probably have too, that when they say copywriting, like they only want to do poetry versus, novels. Like they're like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
just writing a handful of words, like the hook or the headline or like the ad
Yeah.
copy. And like it's just so few words, but it has to be incredibly punchy and data driven. And like that's some people's idea of copywriting. And then you have people that are like, I'm a content writer, which is like they don't do ads, they don't do landing pages, they don't do whatever you want to call it, and they just do
Mm-hmm.
like blog posts or articles. But you're sort of like in the middle ground where you'll do, social posts, but also case studies because you're trying to write for commerce. Like you're not, it's like direct response where it's like, look, I can tie back revenue to the stuff that I write, which my opinion on all marketing, maybe it's a hot take, is that if you can't associate a KPI or a metric to it, then you can't justify its value. If you don't want to be measured, then you probably don't want to get paid more and be respected as a pro, in some degree in marketing. That might be a hot take, but
No, I agree with it. I mean, that's why I got into direct response copywriting first, because I'm like, if I can show like measurable results, then you can't argue with that, right? Versus like brand and creative stuff where it's like, well, no one really knows if this what this campaign did, if it drove sales, because there's no way to measure it. Um, and yeah, that's why I started out like direct response copywriting, which is basically salesmanship in print, right? That's what they call it. And then I got into like the social copywriting, which is more like content. So now I blend those two together to bring people into like the marketing funnel. So I'll use like direct response copywriting to write like a landing page that offers a free ebook, and then that entices you to sign up, get you into the email sequence, and then I use direct response copywriting in the email marketing, you know, and that brings people into the investor portals or books phone calls, whichever you want to do.
man, I could get so granular on talking about the industry just because I'm getting flashbacks to my experience in it. But I wanna pivot my line of questioning. from a big picture, you're creative thinking kind of guy. What are some of the milestones or roadblocks you've experienced in your journey that were transformative? Whether it was like a win that was giving you affirmation, or there
Mhm.
was a loss that you're like, I need to make a change.
Yeah, that's a good one. Okay, I have two. So the first is after I moved back from Hollywood, I was working like part time as like just I guess an administrative assistant, digital marketing assistant, and it was like I was like 30 or 31, and the guy who was like the main marketing guy was like asking me to help him fix the printer. And I just remember standing there and I'm like, dude, you're like 31 and you're fixing a printer in this like little company. I'm like, you like this is like you need to change the game plan. Like you need to change your path because like first of all, I'm just not like I'm not contributing any real value here. And secondly, like I don't want to be like an administrative assistant at 31. So that was the first one. The second one was my first client who actually helped me get into like this whole real estate world. He hired me to write a sales webinar. He was a fund manager, and so basically he was launching his business and he needed to raise money from investors. So I wrote him like a sales funnel with a sales webinar selling people on investing into his fund, and we ran that to his email list, and he raised like 50K from it in a few days from one investor. So that was a really big win for me because it showed me that like all the copywriting stuff that I had been spending years like doing actually paid off. And when I first started, I was like, wow, 50K, that's like a ton of money. Now in the investing world, it's like that's like one investment. But if you're coming from selling like, I don't know, stuff on Facebook for like $15 or one or $2,000 services, then 50K is a huge win. So
Yeah, it's awesome to stack your first win because it gives you that confidence and the affirmation to keep going. But it also you get to look back on it and be like, it's like when you go to a restaurant and they have their first dollar ever made against on the wall. It's like, oh, it's a dollar. But to
yeah,
them, it's like an important milestone. And same thing with marketers and stacking wins. What is one challenge that you think globally or at least in business that if you could solve, you think would make a pretty big impact on the world?
yeah, that's a good one. Oh, I think it's hard for small businesses to get started. Like I don't know if we're like super friendly to small businesses. Like I just think about like if you're trying to start a business and I mean if you're the sole earner, then it's like insurance costs are really high for people and paying that and starting a business is hard. And I think I just I don't feel like our country encourages entrepreneurship as much as it should, you know? So I
Or
think
as
if it
much as
was
it
like
used to.
yeah, as much as it used to. And I mean, America is a country of like of founders and entrepreneurs. But if you're like a normal person, like, if you're a regular guy working like and making 50, 60K a year at a job and you want to start your own business, like it's really hard to do that. And I'm not saying like the government should come in and support you to do that, but I think that like I think we could definitely be like a little more friendly to new businesses and, at least yeah, encouraging people to do that stuff and showing them how to do it. I don't know.
I
What do you think?
I dude, love that is actually the first answer that someone's given that I'm like, maybe I'll change my answer. But my feedback on that is COVID really showed just how accurate that assessment is because you see the largest transfer of wealth in the history of the economy, and it goes from the small businesses closing to
Hmm.
the Uber Main Street, like Wall Street, huge businesses because essentially they monopolized where a lot of the market share was with small business. Look at hardware stores. Like Home
Hmm.
Depot and Lowe's crushed. But
Hmm.
like the local hardware store that's been around for half a century got destroyed.
Yeah.
I saw that in private equity. I mean, I was look, I got lucky, I would say, fortunate when I started my small business because I tried to start a small business like four times in the past doing kind of similar but different. And I had to like eventually go back to getting a job in the previous iterations. It wasn't until I made a liquidity event or exit from the business that I created with partners. Because even starting that business was brutal, right? Like it took like
Hmm.
18 months to get any traction. But if I didn't have, if people that don't have a runway or don't have like any safety net, luckily I had a couple months, like several months worth of capital that I could like invest in the business.
Hmm.
But a lot of people don't have that, and I think you're spot on where we don't make it any easier for people that want to, contribute to the economy.
Yeah, and that's what really grows this country, right? Like we want more people doing high quality work.
I want more people doing high quality work. You do.
Yeah.
I hope everyone does. At least if you're listening to the show, I'm sure you probably agree. Um, one more question. It's not nearly as deep, and that is, where can people find you to connect if they want to, maybe reach out, have a conversation, or learn more about your services?
Yeah, so you can go to my website and sign up for my email list. It's just a one-page website. It's marketraiserepeat.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn, and you just type in my name, Kent Sariano, and probably find it in the show notes or something.
Right on. Kent, appreciate you. Thanks for coming on. It was a pleasure. For everyone listening, I don't run ads in the show. I don't want to run ads in the show. It's not why I do it. The reason I do it is to share valuable conversations that I think will help your personal or career. And if you found this one to be valuable, my only ask is to share it with a friend. Until next time, Thunder Stock Show's out.